I think this is our fourth lecture. So earlier we have seen basically introduction, then we have seen the external stability methodology, and in the third lecture we have seen the internal stability methodology. So today, like we will do a actual problem. Like I thought, because the earlier classes are fresh in mind, so let us reinforce it by actually doing a problem. So like what we will do is we will take a typical info soil wall design, do it by hand, then compare the results with MSCW program. So this is the data. Like see, normally I have taken the most common application is approaches to flyovers or like other underpasses, etc. So here I have seen a typical cross section. So in an actual project, what we will get the finished road levels, that is the proposed road levels, normally at the median. Then they will give the width of the road and the camber or super elevation. So we can calculate the road level at this point. Right? Then the ground level also will be given, surveys will be given, we can get the ground levels. Then the properties of the reinforced fill, retained fill, that will be given. Then the geotechnical investigation report for the foundation strata, that should be given. Then the properties of the reinforcement, like whether we are using a geogrid, geotextile. So here we are considering a knitted and PVC coated geogrids. And the data will be mostly given by the manufacturer, like tensile strength, the reduction factors, interface factors, etc. Given by the manufacturer. So the first step will be the preliminary sizing. So normally we have to assume a certain dimensions, then we check for various failure mechanisms. So here we are given the retained height. That means from the original ground level to the finished road level. So that means from the original ground level to the finished road level, it is 7.6 meters. So now we have to decide on the embedment. So if you look at the FHWA, there are two criteria. One is the height divided by 20, so which can like something like 0.4 meters. Or minimum it should be 0.6 meters. It cannot be less than 0.6 meters. But since we are doing the project in India, we go with the more specifications. That means the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways standard. So it says minimum embedment of 1 meter. So we will go with 1 meter. So retained height is 7.6 plus 1 meter embedment. Then if you look at, you can see this is the top of our facing, like the panels or blocks will be there, then there will be a coping beam. So the road level will be slightly more than that because we have to put this anti-crash barrier. So this slab will be slightly below. So whatever height above the top of the facing, we will replace it as a dead load surcharge. So here this distance is something like 0.6 meter. So I have considered a unit weight of 22 for the payment. So 0.6 into 22, 13.2 will be like a dead load surcharge, UDL. Then the live load, normally as per IRC standards, it is like the equivalent to 1.2 meters of fill, or normally we consider 24 kPa live load for the traffic. So now our design height becomes like 7.6 minus 0.6 plus 1, which is 8 meter. So that will be our design height. Then we have to decide on the minimum length of reinforcement. That will be 0.7 into height, which is equal to 5.6 meters. So if you are actually doing with BS 8006, we would have taken the mechanical height, which would have been 8 plus another 0.6 meter, because we have to take up to the road level. So we should have taken 0.7 into 8.6. That would have been our minimum length. But since we are doing as per FHWA, we don't have to consider the mechanical height. So we will consider 0.7 into 8, 5.6 meters length. So with that, then we'll go to external stability. So various like sliding along base, we have to check. Like overturning, because FHWA does not require overturning check, we will not do that. But if you're doing by NCMA or IRC guidelines, we'll have to check that also. Then eccentricity we have to check, bearing capacity we have to check, global stability we have to check. So first step we'll consider like the horizontal forces. So here I've shown the simple sketch, like there will be active earth pressure due to the retained fill. So that I have called PA1. So this is the active earth pressure applied by the retained fill. So it will have a triangular distribution. Then there are two UDL actually. One due to dead load surcharge, that will be PA2. It will have a rectangular distribution. Then due to the live load surcharge, PA3. So first we will calculate the nominal horizontal forces without any load factors. So we will calculate the coefficient of active earth pressure. See Ka2, actually Ka2 stands for the retained fill. So it is the phi value is given us 34 degrees. So we'll get Ka is equal to 0.2827. Then we calculate PA1. So it's basically half into Ka into unit weight into h square, half Ka gamma h square. So calculate this, we get 134.7. PA2 will be Ka into the UDL into H. So again, Ka 0.2827 into load is 13.2 into height, 9.85. PA3 is due to the live load. So again, Ka into the UDL into height. We get 54.28. Now the LRFD we are to, so these are the nominal loads or sort of actual loads. Then we have to multiply it by the load factors. So these load factors are given in the FSWA guideline. So for the unit weight of fill, we have to consider, for the pressure applied by the fill, we have to consider 1.5. Similarly, for this also, for the UDL also, dead load also, load factor of 1.5. But for the live load, we have to consider 1.75. So normally, possibly, like see, if we can predict the magnitude of the loads with more confidence, we can use a lower load factor, because probably the live loads is more variable. So they have used a higher load factor like that. So like we have to multiply the nominal load by the corresponding load factor. So we get the factored horizontal force, 343.32 kN. Then we calculate the vertical forces. So here we have the cell weight of the fill. Then we have two UDLs actually. So again, we calculate the nominal vertical forces. So we have the weight of the reinforced fill. So the length, actually it's the weight of this block of soil. So length 5.6 into height is 8 meter into unit weight. So it is 15 because it is pond ash. It will have a slightly lower density than soil. So we get this value. Then the dead load surcharge. So the length is 5.6 meter into the magnitude of the load. So 5.6 into 13.2. That will be the force due to the dead load surcharge. That means we have to calculate the force acting on this block actually, because we are going to analyze the stability of this block. Similarly, live load surcharge, force due to live load surcharge will be again 5.6 into 24. Again, we have to apply the load factors. So here we have to consider two situations. Like it's like a combination of the more critical condition. So for assume, like if I want to check for bearing capacity, so I want to consider the maximum possible value of the force. Whereas if you want to check for sliding, because the more weight on this, the more stable is. So I want to, in the case of sliding, I want to look at the worst possible situation. That is when the vertical force is the minimum. Like that. So we calculate two values. One is the maximum value and one is the minimum value. So when I consider the maximum factored resultant force, the recommended load factors are, for the weight of fill, it is 1.35. For the dead load surcharge is 1.5. For the live load surcharge is 1.75. So I calculated the RV max. So this is the maximum value of the factored vertical force. Similarly, the minimum, when I calculate the minimum, then I take a load factor of 1 for the self weight. Similarly, if load factor of 1 for the permanent or the dead load surcharge, Then the live load I ignore actually, because the live load, it may be there, it may not be there, depending on how many vehicles are coming, where at a particular point of time the vehicles are there or not. So when we calculate the minimum factored horizontal force, sorry, vertical force, we ignore the live load. So these are the factored vertical forces, maximum and minimum values. Now we can check for the sliding along base. So here, basically, we have the reinforced soil. It has got a phi value of 34 because cohesion is 0. The effective cohesion is 0. Phi is 34. Then we have the foundation soil. Again, cohesion is 0. Phi is 30 degrees. So now, actually, theoretically, the sliding will happen along the interface. So which value of friction angle we have to consider? See, normally we have to consider the least shear strength actually. So ideally what we should do, like sometimes there could be a cohesion also, especially if the foundation soil is clay and we are considering undrained. So we can actually calculate the shear strength, and whichever gives minimum, we can take that actually. So in this case, since both are C values 0, then we can take the lower phi value. So assume the plane of sliding will be foundation soil. So the factored horizontal disturbing force we have calculated earlier, which is 343.32, and factored resistance to sliding is, so here there is a resistance factor. So for the sliding, we take it as 1. So the factored resistance to sliding is the resistance factor into RV minimum, because like we want to calculate the minimum resisting force, that will be the most critical. So we take the minimum vertical factored force, then into the tan phi of the foundation soil. So in this case, our resistance factor is 1. Again, this is given in the code actually. Like we take the value of 1 into the RV minimum value into tan 30. So this gives our factored resistance. Then we calculate the capacity demand ratio. So which is the ratio of capacity to demand. So capacity is like how much capacity we have, how much strength we have, and demand is the kind of load actually. So 430 divided by 343.2, we get a value of 1.2. So the CDR should be greater than or equal to 1, then it is safe. So this is the design requirement. We have to ensure a capacity demand ratio of CDR. That means the capacity should be more than the demand, or the factored resistance should be more than the factored load. So this is safe. So the next we go to eccentricity. So here again we have to calculate the moments actually. So we take the moments about the toe. So this is PA1 is due to the active earth pressure due to fill. So this magnitude we have earlier calculated, like 135.7. Then lever arm will be height divided by 3, because this is a distribution is triangular. So lever arm will be 8 by 3, 2.667. Then we take a load factor of 1.5. So this is the factored moment. Similarly, this is due to the vertical force. Sorry, this is due to the dead load surcharge, earth pressure due to dead load surcharge. So magnitude is 29.85, we calculated earlier. So lever arm will be L by 2. Sorry, height H by 2, height by 2, 4. In load factor of 1.5. Then this is due to the earth pressure due to live load surcharge. Here also lever arm will be 4 H by 2. The load factor is 1.75. So we take the factored moment, overturning moment, we will get 1101.9. Then we calculate the resisting moment. So this is due to the weight of soil. Again, we had calculated this. And the lever arm will be the length of reinforcement by 2. So 5.6 by 2 is 2.8. So here we take a load factor of 1, because we want to get the minimum possible vertical force. So when the vertical force is minimum, this is the most critical condition. So we get the factored moment. So this is for the dead load surcharge. We get this value. So now the live load we ignore actually, or the load factor will be 0 because the live load, it may be there, it may not be there. So assuming worst condition, we assume the live load is not there. So we get the resisting moment. So the distance of resultant from tau will be given by this value, mr minus m0 by the vertical force. So we get 1.32 meter. So the eccentricity we take from the center of gravity. So that is 5.6 divided by 2 minus 1.32. So we get the eccentricity of 1.48 meter. Then we calculate the ratio E by L. That means the eccentricity divided by the length of the reinforcement. 1.48 divided by 5.6. It is actually 0.264. But the maximum permissible E by L ratio is 0.25. So that means the design is not safe. Eccentricity is more than allowed. So that means we have to increase the length. So let us increase the length to 5.8 and see what happens. So again, we have to calculate the vertical forces because horizontal forces remain same because that is a function of the height actually, not the length of the reinforcement. So we have to calculate the vertical forces with L is equal to 5.8. Again, we repeat the calculation. So factor first we'll calculate the nominal vertical force. We get this value. It will be 5.8 length into height 8 into 15. Similarly, dead load surcharge will be 5.8 into 13.2. Live load will be 5.8 into 24. And we calculate the factored vertical force. Again, maximum and minimum with the corresponding load factors. So we get this revised values. Now again, we take the alternating moment. So these will remain same because these are about the horizontal forces. Same as we have calculated earlier. The resisting moment will increase. So again, we calculate the weight of fill, dead load surcharge, live load we are ignoring, and the load factors will be 1 here. So we calculate the distance of the resultant from the toe. It will be 1.474. Then we calculate the eccentricity. We get 1.426. Again, we calculate the E by L ratio. So 1.426 divided by the length of the reinforcement, which is 5.8. We get 0.246. So this is less than 0.25. So it is safe. That means a length of 5.8 meter is okay. So of course, the sliding, it was safe earlier, but then to get the actual factor safety with the increased length, we'll repeat this sliding calculation. So again, the horizontal disturbing force remains same, it does not change. And the vertical force will increase. We have to take the RB minimum. So again, we calculate the resistance factor is 1. So factored resistance sliding is 446.04. So again, we calculate the capacity demand ratio. It is 1.3. So it is sliding. Earlier also there was no problem. It was safe. We had to increase the length only because of the eccentricity. So sliding is okay. Eccentricity is okay. Now we have to go to the bearing capacity check. So first we'll have to calculate the bearing pressure. For that, we'll have to calculate again the vertical forces and the eccentricity, etc. So first we calculate the maximum resultant vertical force. So the nominal value earlier we had calculated this one. So now the load factor is 1.35. So we have to calculate the maximum possible value of the vertical force. We get these load factors 1.35 for the cell weight of fill, 1.5 for dead load surcharge, and 1.75 for the live load. So now for the bearing capacity, the maximum bearing pressure will come when the RV is maximum. So we consider the live load also with a load factor of 1.75. So we calculate the maximum RV max, we get this value. So again, we'll have to calculate the eccentricity because we are using the Meyerhof pressure distribution. For that, we have to calculate the eccentricity. So again, we calculate the alternating moments. Earlier, we had calculated. Then resisting moments. Now it is same, but then we will have to use this corresponding load factors. So since we are considering RV max, so here also we'll have to take the corresponding load factors 1.35, 1.5, and 1.75. We get the factored moment. Then again we calculate the eccentricity. So that is L by 2 minus the resisting moment minus the overturning moment divided by the vertical force. So we get 0.849 meters. Then the effective width of foundation will be our length of reinforcement, which is 5.8 minus 2 into eccentricity. So it is 4.10 meter. That will be the effective width of foundation. So we have put the RV max we had calculated. It is 1298.04. Then the effective width we had calculated is 4.1 meter. So our factored bearing pressure will be the RV divided by the effective width of foundation. So we get 316.6 kPa. So this is the factored bearing pressure. Now we have to calculate the ultimate bearing capacity. So the foundation soil, we have the data C0 530, gamma is equal to 18. Then assuming water table at ground level, let us assume the worst possible situation. Then we, for the phi is equal to 30, we can get the bearing capacity factors. So I have taken this from the IS 6403.
Yeah.
In gamma is equal to 22. Hello. Yes.
So, we are using RV minimum for sliding and RV max for bearing simultaneously in the same question only.
I didn't get you.
We are using RV minimum, vertical force minimum for sliding, and for bearing check we are using maximum RV maximum.
RV max, yes. So this is the see what we are trying to find out the worst case for a situation. Like for sliding, the worst case is when there is less load on the reinforced soil. Vertical weight is minimum. And for bearing, the worst critical situation is when the vertical load is maximum.
Yeah, that's the intent. That's how we do it, Anna.
Yeah, but
so it's not a mistake. It is deliberately done like that because the basis is based upon sigma tan phi, isn't it? So maximum stress is going to come. If you take like that, that means we are unsafe actually in the sliding. So deliberately is using the lesser value. That's what the code says. Bearing capacity is the worst. That means maximum possible load which we are considering, factored maximum load we are taking it. So you should remember this. I think he's already told you, but I'm just putting in different words.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Because the basic idea is, see, everything has a variability, like the unit weight, the load, like that means the live load, everything is variable. So we don't know what is the exact value like that. So we are trying to put a range, like, okay, minimum is this, maximum is this. In both cases, it is safe like that. And sometimes the critical condition is different. Sometimes when we have less load, it is critical. That, for example, sliding, like less vertical load, it is more critical. But for bearing capacity, when we have more vertical load, that is more critical. So that is the basic philosophy of limit state design.
Okay, sir, got it.
So then we calculate the nominal ultimate bearing capacity. So it will be, there is no cohesion, so that is 0. So we have half gamma B n gamma into the water table correction factor plus gamma D, this is the embedment depth, into NQ. So we substitute the values. So B dash will be the effective width. So 0.5, gamma is 18, the effective width is 4.1. Then n gamma is 22.4. Then water table correction factor will be 0.5 because the water table is at the ground level. So it's 0.5. And so since water table is at ground level, so we have to take the submerged unit weight. So 18 minus 9.81 into 1. This is the depth of embedment. Into NQ is 18.4. So here actually we are calculating the gross bearing capacity. So we get 564 kPa. So when we do MSCW, and see, normally in the FSW manual, actually they don't take this factor, this embedment factor, they ignore. So it's because normally the embedment is less. See, if you go with FHWA, it will be H by 20 or 0.6 meter. is relatively small value. So probably that's why they ignore it actually. Whereas in our moat, we are taking 1 meter, and many times we have service load actually. So like erosion, scour may not be possible. So I have taken this value. Whereas if you do the design as per MSCW, actually you will get only this value because the program does not take this. But we have an option actually. The program has an option to enter the ultimate bearing capacity. So we can do 2 ways. One is we can enter this value like C5, gamma, etc., and use the program to calculate the ultimate bearing capacity. But it will calculate this value, 430. Or we can, there is an option when we enter the soil parameters, there is an option for entering the ultimate bearing capacity. So we can calculate with the IS 6403, you can calculate and we can enter this value there. That means we calculate this value, ultimate bearing capacity is 564 kPa. So this we can give us input of ultimate bearing capacity. So both way it is possible. Then we have to calculate the factored bearing capacity. Like, so if it was a working stress design, what you have done, like we would have considered only the nominal loads. Like that means without any load factor, actual bearing pressure. Then we would have computed the ultimate bearing capacity, and this we would have divided by a factor of say 2.5. So instead of that, here what we do, like the loads we are increasing, then we are applying a load factor. Same way, the ultimate bearing capacity we have to reduce by applying a resistance factor. So this factor is 0.65 actually. So 0.65 into 564. So this becomes our factored bearing capacity. So this is 366.6 kPa. So again, we calculate the capacity demand ratio. Capacity is this much, the factored resistance, divided by the demand. Demand is the factored load, actually 316.6. So it has to be greater than 1. That is the design criteria. So again, I want to emphasize, so instead of applying a single factor safety, we are applying it 2 levels. First, we are increasing the loads with the load factor. Then we are reducing the bearing capacity with the resistance factor. So this is a more rational way. So that means like wherever we feel there is more uncertainty, we can use a higher factor. Wherever we feel like we can predict the values with more confidence, we can use a less factor like that. So that is why this is a more rational method than working stress. So this is safe. So the length is okay. It is safe. So next, actually, we should check for global stability. But then this we have to use a appropriate software. So in MSCW, there is an option like for checking global stability also. But more better way would be what I use is I use RISA actually because it's more convenient entering layers and all. Like there are more options. So like we go to the RISA, then enter all the like reinforcement data, etc. Then we can do a global stability analysis. Or many other slope stability software, they allow reinforcements actually. Like so we can like any slope W slide also we can do this actually because those programs are much more powerful. So RISA is okay, but only it has some limitations because like handling pore pressure. Like we cannot put a pore pressure parameter. Only thing we can do is we can put a like a piezometric surface, like groundwater table is there, we can enter there. Otherwise, so more complicated situations, maybe it's maybe better to use a program like slope W or slide. So another option which people use is like, see, one option is to enter the actual, like the reinforcement, the properties, etc. One way is possible. Otherwise, we can put an equivalent parameters like some other a combination of C value, phi value, so that the failure surface is forced outside this. Like that way also people do it. So global stability, presently we are not doing. But in the actual design also, this is a very important check. So now we move on to internal stability. So first we have to check for internal sliding, then rupture of reinforcement, and then adherence and pull out of reinforcement. Adherence or pull out of reinforcement. So for this, we need the reinforcement properties. So like we are, as I mentioned, we are considering knitted and coated polyester geogrids, then tensile strength, like So we have to select a product which is first we'll decide on a particular manufacturer. Then we have to select whichever product he has. So nowadays, these are the commonly range of geogrids available, like the different strengths will be available. Up to 300 or even 400 kilonewton per meter products are available in the market. Then the reduction factors like creep, installation damage, durability. So these are given by the manufacturer. So for example, like creep, it depends on the temperature like that. So depending on the temperature in the area, and that is the average in soil temperature, we have to select a value. Then insulation damage, it will depend on the kind of fill material we are using. So presently we are using Pondash. So it is not a very aggressive material. So like that. In durability, depending on we'll have to select the appropriate value. So total reduction factor will be 1.87. Then again, interaction factors. So coefficient of interaction with direct sliding, let us take it as 0.85. So again, the manufacturer will have for different like sand or gravel, sandy gravel, like different materials will give. But sometimes we are using a fill which doesn't fit with these values, then we'll have to get a test conducted. Then in the MSAW, it actually uses this value, interface friction angle direct sliding, which is actually 0.85 into our tan phi of the fill material, 0.85 into tan 34 into tan inverse of that. So 29.83. So this is like a interface friction angle, we can call it. Again, coefficient of interaction for pull out is 0.85. So this is they have something known as a scale effect correction factor, the FHWA. So this is related to the because normally when you pull the geogrid from the soil, it actually elongates. Whereas if it is a metallic reinforcement, it doesn't elongate much actually. So to account for that, we apply a scale effect correction factor of 0.8. So here I have taken nowadays, earlier the geogrid used to be of continuous width. That means at a particular level, the entire area used to be covered with geogrid. Geogrids roll width, maybe if it is 5 meters, so a 5 meter wide roll will be there, then abutting that another roll will be laid. So this shows this is actually the plan arrangement. But now in India, what they are doing, like most of the companies are doing, they are cutting the geogrid into strips, narrow strips, maybe 0.25 or 0.3 meter wide. Then it is folding back through the full length. That means like they will have some connection like hooks, everything. So this strip goes and around the connecting bar and comes back to the full length. So effectively, this is like 2 layer, like a double layer reinforcement. So why they're doing it is to economize the design. That means, see, normally with this, like we use less quantity of grid, but with more strength. So the cost, somewhat they can save on this. So that is the basic idea, to optimize the cost. So I thought I will also try a design with this. So this actually, we have a concept of percentage coverage actually. So if the geogrid covers the full area, then we have 100% coverage. So now we have strips. That means we can see gaps here. So that means the coverage is not 100%. So how do we calculate the coverage? So if I take a particular, we can take any representative width. This is actually one panel. Like assume we have panels of width 1.5 meter. So in that there are 2 strips actually. But in this each strip there are 2 layers, like 1 layer, 2 layer. So there are 4. So 4 into width. So 245 mm divided by this into 100. So that is the percentage coverage. So that means it is around 64.33 this percent. The coverage factor, or we call it is 0.6533. So this we will have to use in design. So this is the way we calculate the percentage coverage. But if we are covering the entire area with geogrid, it would have been coverage factor would have been 1. Then we have panels of say 1.6 meter, and the reinforcement spacing we are keeping it as 800 millimeters. Normally we try to keep the spacing as uniform as possible. So here there are many criteria. Like one is the compaction lift, because we have to place and compact the soil in lift actually. So this has to be in multiple of that. So if you are compacting like fill in like 200 mm lift, this is very convenient like that. Secondly, if you are using segmental blocks, then the spacing has to be in multiples of that block thickness like that. And again, we have to put a hook like that. So when you use the same spacing, your casting of the panel also becomes very easy, like because the hook spacing is standardized actually. So sometimes like we think, okay, let me try to optimize the design by having a different spacings. But then practically it becomes very cumbersome. Your casting becomes very complex. And at the time of erection also, you'll have to locate that particular panel and it will become very, very difficult actually. So normally we try to use the uniform spacings, but then we can vary the strength actually like that. So that is the way we say. So normally we try to keep the spacing, but sometimes what happens, like if it is a 25 or 30-meter high wall, then sometimes you will find even with 300 kilonewton, it is not enough. So that time you'll have to probably use a closer spacing. So right now we are having 800 mm spacing. So we select a layout actually. So normally what happens, it's a trial and error. First we assume certain the spacing is fixed. So we assume a certain strength. Then we check for like this thing, like rupture, pull out, etc. If it is unsafe, we either increase the strength or decrease the strength. Like if it is factor safety is more, we can also decrease the strength. So it's a trial and error procedure. Finally, we will get the optimum layout. Design strength is given, percentage coverage also. So it is same for all levels. So we have now 10 layers of geogrids. So the height above the base also, first layer will be at 0.4, then 0.8, 0.8, 0.8 like that, then 7.6. And internal sliding, so we have to check for layer 1. So internal sliding for each layer we will check actually. So this is procedure is very similar to the earlier we had checked the sliding along the base, that was along the base actually. Now sliding at this level. So then we have to consider the horizontal forces at this level. So we calculate the earth pressure above this level. I have taken this. Again, we have due to the fill, the live load surcharge and the dead load surcharge. Same procedure. So forces will be half Ka gamma h square. But now our h is height above the bottommost layer, which is 7.6 meter. With that 7 point, we calculate all the factors and similar load factors like 1.5 and 1.75. Then we calculate the vertical forces. Again, what is the vertical force above this actually due to the soil above this layer plus surcharges. So weight of reinforced fill is the length is 5.8 into height above that layer is 7.6 meter into unit weight. Dead load surcharge, same 5.8 into 13.2. And actually the live load surcharge we are ignoring actually, because for sliding, this earlier we have calculated the minimum value of the vertical force. So same way here also we ignore the live load surcharge. So factored minimum resultant vertical force is again the load factor is 1, because for sliding we want to have the minimum force, so load factor is 1. Internal sliding, same concept actually. See now our reinforcement coverage factor is 0.6533. The RC is the coverage factor. So in the plane of sliding, so 65.3% of the area it will be geogrid to soil sliding. Balance portion is soil to soil sliding. So nominal resistance to sliding is RC into tan rho. So wherever the reinforcement is there, it is 0.6533 into this. And wherever reinforcement is not there, sliding is between soil to soil. So we take tan 34. This is 448.9. So again, resistance factor for sliding is 1. Then factored resistance to sliding is 1 into this. So, and horizontal disturbing force we had calculated earlier. So the ratio, we get the capacity to demand ratio. So I would like to highlight actually this is not strictly correct actually, because if you remember, the coverage actually there is a double layer. So the area, so the coverage actually double layer actually. So this slightly for the purpose of sliding, this slightly overestimates the coverage actually. So this, then our MSCW also it is like that. So I have assumed the same value.
There is a degree, the inclination which you have to do. They are a different inclination, is it not? Horizontal inclination is there. They are not almost overlapping. What you have shown in the picture is almost overlapping. Yeah. Some 15 degrees something there is there.
That's a little fine tuning is there like that.
So actually, I also had a lot of doubt. So we calculated with Mohan. It didn't make much difference actually.
Yeah, actually, it doesn't make much difference actually. So here also, this is slightly on the conservative side only, because actually we are overestimating the contact area of reinforcement. So,
yeah, but the friction value. The friction value is overestimated, right? The friction factor is overestimated because we don't have the contact.
Yeah, no, we are assuming more coverage, like in the sense, because for tensile strength, this is okay, 65.3. But actually, if you look at actual plane of coverage, it will be like half.
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
For the purpose of sliding, actually.
That is where I'm saying.
Yeah. But anyway, MSCW will calculate this only. So I wanted to show comparison with MSCW also. I just left it like that only.
Yeah, but anyway, we'll keep this in mind. Anyway,
yeah,
please go ahead.
There is on the conservative side for sliding.
Yeah.
Then, so I'm checking next low to layer 10 actually, because actually we will do all this, but since we just want to show. So layer 10, same procedure we do, like now the vertical force, the horizontal force means only above this level we calculate the pressures. Similarly, vertical force above this layer. So we see the factor of safety is much higher now, like that. So if at all internal sliding will occur, it will be on the bottom 1 or 2 layers. As we come to the top, factor safety will increase. So right now it is safe, but sometimes if we find that factor safety is not less than 1 or 2 layers, we have to increase the time to make the factor safety. Then we have to check for rupture, and we have seen this earlier. So basically, we will have to look at the idea is at any level we calculate the vertical stress. Then the coefficient of pressure to vertical stress will give the horizontal stress. Then for each reinforcement, we get the tributary area. That means, like suppose this layer I take. So we take the midpoint of these two, then midpoint of these two. So that will be the contributory area for that. So this reinforcement will resist within that actually. So fortunately for us, it is constant because it is all uniform spacing. It will be 0.8 meter. Then SV into, that means we are calculating for 1 meter length of the wall. So this is 1. So this will give the tension in that reinforcement. So it's a very simple calculation. So I have done this for layer 1. So the factored vertical stress due to fill is, so again, so here the most critical is when the tension in the reinforcement is maximum. So that means we have to get the maximum value of the vertical forces. So we use the load factors, corresponding load factor. For the weight of fill is 1.35. So 1.35 into the height above that layer is 7.6 into the unit weight 15. So we get this. Similarly, the dead load surcharge 1.5 into 13.2. And since we want to consider the maximum vertical force, we have to consider the live load surcharge with a load factor of 1.75 APA. So when we add up all this, we get the total vertical stress at that level is 250.7. Whereas if it was as per BS, then we should have taken we would have taken the weight of this total vertical force, then we would have taken the moments, calculated eccentricity, then vertical stress would have been the vertical force divided by L minus 2E. So it would have given a much higher vertical stress. So normally it could be around maybe around maybe around 20-25% more stress will come. But the FSWA will have to simply just add up the weight. Actually, that is the procedure. So this is one of the major difference between BS and FSWA procedure, like how we calculate the vertical stress. So then the vertical stress we multiplied by the coefficient of active earth pressure 0.2827, because for the geogrid we are assuming it is an extensible reinforcement. So we are assuming active earth pressure conditions prevail. So we are using coefficient of active earth pressure. So factor tension the reinforcement is 0.2827 into the vertical stress into the contributory area, which is 0.8 meter. So 48.78 is the factor tension. Now the design strength available. So we multiply. So at that particular level we have a this geogrid, actually 180 kilonewton per meter, and its design strength is long-term design strength is 96.15. So that means we have divided the ultimate tensile strength by all the reduction factors. We get 96.15. Coverage ratio is 65.3%. So nominal LTDS per linear meter is the coverage factor. That means 0.6533 into 96.17, 62.83 kilonewton. And we have to multiply this by the resistance factor, which for geosynthetics is 0.9 as per the LRFD method. So factored design strength will be 0.9 into this long-term design strength, which is 56.55. So again, we calculate the capacity demand ratio, which is capacity is this, demand is this much. So ratio is 1.59, 1.59. So it is safe. We can always optimize. Sometimes we find this is the factor safety is more, then we try. Like if 180 is not required, we can try with 150. Like that, we can optimize. Then we check for the top layer. Like sorry, it should be layer 10. Mistake. So now it will be like the vertical stress will be less, so the horizontal pressure will be less. So tension
just 1 second at this stage. You said very importantly that we can optimize. That is a very important point. Optimization is possible when you got smaller strength values also. That means the company makes say 100, 200, 300 kilonewtons per meter. So naturally, optimization is very difficult. Whereas if the company makes, let us say, at intervals of 50 kilonewton or maybe 20 kilonewton, it will be easy to optimize also. So it depends upon the company also, because that is where the choice comes in. When you are choosing the geosynthetic now, so for a particular kind of product now, so that values are very important, and that is where he said importantly we can optimize it now. Optimization is possible not by our calculation; it is by the available geosynthetic, and which has given a table to you. The table is very important actually. That is, he given a summary of the table wherein we are getting the real available tensile strength actually. If you also please note that I think he started with 180 kilonewton. What is the value actually? 96 is the value, is it not? After all factors are done now, and even then it's still reduced also. So you find that almost we are getting from ultimate 50% strength only, which is really available. That is the idea we should keep in mind. After all the factors are taken into consideration, the actual design strength value is almost 50%. And optimization, he rightly mentioned, is possible only when you got, you can say, closer intervals of strength available, which depends on the company which makes it. Thank you, Jimmy. Sorry to interfere. It's a very important point to you.
I think one more point, like in the MSCW, we can use 5 different type of reinforcements. That's all. So, but normally the practice in India, we use up to 8, like because cost is a big factor like that. So normally what people do is even like if we are using our own spreadsheets, there is no problem. But sometimes MSAW also I have seen, like many people, we split the design into two actually. We have to, that means bottom few layers we do one design, then the top few layers we do another design so that we can use more type of geogrids.
Is it correct?
Yeah, we can do that. So there is no issue actually.
No issue.
Yeah, there is no problem. Yeah. Only it is a bit awkward, like, but then I have seen many projects, like I have seen people are using it. Like I also done like for some clients. But
Anyway, that's where you play. That's where you play with the materials. Optimization. Yeah.
So, but the only problem is like when you use more and more type of grids, then construction becomes little more complicated actually. So it is a compromise. So actually, when I do design for other countries, like for example, Canada, and they are very clear, like don't use more than 3 types, maximum 3 types, not more than that.
Okay.
Because for them, like cost is not a big criteria, but they want like construction to be more easier. Like.
Easy, yeah.
So here we can layer 10. So here the tension is something like 15.81. So again, we calculate the LTDS. So it was actually a 60 kilonewton grid. LTDS was this. So this is the design strength. So again, we get a factor here. So this is also safe. So check for pullout. So like we know the procedure. We take that this is the critical failure plane, 45 plus 5 by 2. So beyond that, that will be the effective anchorage length. So we know the tension at this point. We know, then we have to calculate what is the pull-out resistance. So again, same, like we calculate the vertical stress at that in this zone. So pull-out resistance will be area into the bond stress, whatever shear stress. So the area will be actually 2 into, that means we have top side, bottom side, 2 into length, anchorage length, into 1. That means we are considering 1 meter length into RC. Again, please remember, like we are not having 100% coverage. We are having less coverage like that. RC into the vertical stress we are calculating. Into tan phi, we calculate tan phi I, that means the interface angle in pull out. So which is CI, coefficient of interaction in pull out. Then alpha, that is the scale effect correction factor, into the friction angle of soil. So if I look at the layer 1, we can see here, first we calculate what is this length, LAJ, the active, the length in the active zone. So that will be 0.4 into, so this is 62, so this will be 28 degrees, this angle. So 0.4 into tan 28, 0.21. So the effective anchorage length will be 5.8 minus 21, which is 5.59. And FSWA has a criteria, it should be at least 1, like anchorage length has to be at least 1 meter. So here it is actually much more, so that is okay. Then we calculate the minimum. So again, for pull out also, like when we have more vertical stress, we'll have more resistance, but we want to find out the minimum resistance, most critical case. So again, we'll have to take the minimum vertical stress. So the load factor will be 1 actually for this. So 7.6 height above that level into unit weight, plus we can take the dead load surcharge. But live load surcharge we are ignoring. So that is the usual practice. So we get this vertical stress. So we can calculate 2 into, this is effective length, into the coverage factor, into the vertical stress. Then 0.85, that is the coefficient of interaction value, 0.8 scale affection factor into tan 34. So we get this load resistance. Then resistance factor is 0.9, we have to multiply. So factored pull-out resistance is this much. So factor tension we had earlier calculated, so we get this value. So CADR is 7.86. So normally find at the bottom we get a very high factor safety because we can see there is a large vertical stress and large anchorage length. So pull-out failure is impossible. So let us try the top layer, layer 10. So here again, so the LAJ is see this 87.6 into 1028. So this length is 4.04. So anchorage length is 5.8 minus that. So it's only 1.76 meter. But still it is greater than 1 meter, the minimum required. It's okay. And similarly, we calculate the vertical stress. So 1 into the height above that is 0.4 into unit weight plus load surcharge. And load resistance multiplied by resistance factor, we get 18.23. Factor tension, we have calculated area, it's 15.81. CDR is again more than 1. So it is safe actually. But if factors, sometimes you find top 1 or 2 layers, we may have a problem. We may not get the factor safety. So at that time, we'll have to increase the length by the required amount. So if we can have here, we have given a comparison like this problem. If you design with MVCW, this will be the factors we get. 0.299. So very close match actually, we can see. So one problem actually with the pullout, the coverage with the strips, actually there is some issue like that. Because the layers, there is a double layer and sometimes there is layers are overlapping, like each is not, let me just go to that. Look at here, the layers are sort of overlapping. So the coverage, this factor may not be a correct representation for pullout. So ideally what we do or what I recommend is, so we have to see like how much it is overlapping. So when you come, see normally what happens, pullout is towards this end actually. So there it may separate, but then it has to be slightly adjusted, that factor actually, like for pullout. So this is in practical design, we also try to do that. Many other companies may be doing, like slight fine tuning may be required. Like that means the coverage factor cannot be just like that, put it, because there is an overlapping, partially there is an overlap. So what I suggest, later on when you try the MSCW, you can do the same problem, or you can pick any problem, then do the same thing, do the hand calculation and see that there is a good match with that. Because when we do with the hand calculation, it gives more confidence actually, and we will never forget. Because software, like we don't know what is happening inside, but when we do a hand calculation, we get more confident and we get thorough with the actual procedure. So with that, I think it's time I will conclude.